Alzheimer's disease is a progressive degenerative disorder that attacks the brain's nerve cells or neurons, resulting in loss of memory, thinking, and language skills, and behavioral changes. Hello, I'm Candace Rotolo, and please join me for part 1 of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The brain's nerve cells, called neurons, produce acetylcholine, a brain chemical that is classified as a neurotransmitter. In Alzheimer's disease, neurons break connections with other nerve cells and ultimately die. For example, short-term memory fails when Alzheimer's disease first destroys nerve cells in the
weekend, and President Putin of Germany gave one of the old Cold War-style speeches as he addressed the conference there. The recent behavior that Russia has exhibited, and I'll be glad to talk about that later on, including reduction in oil supplies to Czechoslovakia after they agreed with us on a missile defense system, etc. But
I have a lot of work to do, and I'm afraid that it's a very hard struggle, particularly given the situation on the Iraq-Pakistan border.
Senator Obama says while the increased number of U.S. troops contributed to increased security in Iraq, he also credits the Sunni awakening and the Shiite government going after militias and says that there might have been improved security even without the surge. What's your response to that?
I don't know how you respond to something that is such a false depiction of what actually happened. Colonel McFarland was contacted by one of the major Sunni sheikhs. Because of the surge, we were able to go out and protect that sheikh and others, and it began the Anbar awakening. I mean, that's just a matter of history.
If we're saying it's a matter of history, here are a few historical key dates. August 2006, the so-called Anbar Awakening kicks off with a meeting between Colonel McFarland and Sheikh Abdul al-Rashawi. January 2007, the surge is introduced, announced by President Bush. If you're not familiar with him, he's the commander-in-chief. He ordered the escalation of U.S. troops in Iraq, and that would be the definition of the surge. June 2007, all surge troops were finally in place. Operations could properly begin a full 10 months after the Sunni awakening in Anbar. It is worth noting that the vast majority of surge troops went to Baghdad, not to Anbar, and that the same sheikh that McCain claimed to Katie Couric the surge was able to protect was himself assassinated in September 2007 when the surge was at its peak.
My kids, my children for many, many years have questioned my awareness. I think it was my son, one of my sons, that alleged that I'm getting to the point where I hide my own Easter eggs.
First destroys nerve cells in the hippocampus, and language skills and judgment decline when neurons die in the...
If that authority is entrusted to me, I will use the veto as needed. I will veto every single bill.
Disease that is a dementia. The first major sign of Alzheimer's disease is memory loss. The second is difficulty performing task, familiar task. A third, there's often a language disturbance, misusing words. Fourth, disorientation to time and place. Fifth, problems with judgment and reasoning. Another is difficulties with abstractions or concept thinking. Another is misplacing objects. There may be a change in personality. Some people have a change in mood. And finally, there's often
Mr. President, there is no reason for the United States of America to remain in Somalia. The American people want them home. I believe the majority of Congress wants them home. And to set an artificial date of March 31st or even February 1st, in my view, is not acceptable. The criteria should be to bring them home as rapidly and safely as possible, an evolution which I think could be completed in a matter of weeks. Mr. President, our continued military presence in Somalia allows another situation to arise which could then lead to the wounding, killing, or capture of American fighting men and women. We should do all in our power to avoid that. Date certain, Mr. President, are not the criteria here. What's the criteria, and what should be the criteria, is our immediate, orderly withdrawal from Somalia. And if we don't do that, and other Americans die, other Americans are wounded, other Americans are captured, because we stay too long, longer than necessary, then I would say that the responsibilities for that lie with the Congress of the United States, who did not exercise their authority under the Constitution of the United States and mandate that they brought home quickly and safely as possible. But the mission which the American people supported and this Congress supported in an overwhelming resolution has been accomplished. The American people did not support the goals of nation building, peacemaking, law and order, and certainly not warlord hunting. For us to get into nation building, law and order, etc., I think is a tragic and terrible mistake. But the argument that somehow the United States would suffer a loss to our prestige and our viability as far as the #1 superpower in the world, I think is baloney. The fact is, can erode our prestige, Mr. President. I'll tell you what can hurt our viability as the world superpower, and that is if we enmesh ourselves in a drawn-out situation, which entails the loss of American lives, more debacles like the one we saw with the failed mission to capture Adid's lieutenants using American forces, and that then will be what hurts our prestige. We suffered a tragedy in Beirut, Mr. President. 240 young Marines lost their lives, but we got out. Now's the time for us to get out of Somalia as rapidly and as promptly and as safely as possible.
I just want to address this very quickly. How long are we going to be in Iraq?
But it's a long, hard struggle.
I've got to tell you that we're going to be in this struggle for the rest of this century. And I'm sorry to tell you that we're going to be in further wars.
And we were in 2 wars today combating it, and there are other places in the world where we may have to. My friends, I know how to handle the Iranians, and I'll handle them.
These young people that are in this crowd, my friends, I'm going to be asking you to serve. This is a long, hard, tough war.
The consequences of failure in Iraq are catastrophic.
And it's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be long and hard and difficult.
Bush has talked about our staying in Iraq for 50 years.
Maybe 100. It's fine with me. I hope it will be fine with you.
Now, my friends, I've got to give you some straight talk. There's going to be more wars. There's going to be more wars. We're in a greater struggle that is going to be with us for the rest of this century.
That old Beach Boys song, Bomb Iran. Bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway.
Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia or loss of intellectual function among people aged 65 and older.
In 2005, the people of Afghanistan defied the terrorists and elected a democratic legislature. And in 2005, the
Neither. I am a illiterate that has to rely on my wife for all of the assistance that I can get.